everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, overwhelmed Christians who live in franticity and want to stop living in that place and find freedom, abundance, and peace. I'm Liz First, and this is my husband, Evan.
Hello. I'm a little under the weather. I'm feeling self-conscious about that, but I'm here.
It just means your voice is even deeper, honey.
Yes, hello.
I've been sick for the last week.
That's
Haven't
right,
been bothering you. Anyway,
I think you sound great.
Thanks. I think that your deep voice is cool. As you guys know, we work our way through the CSCs. They are being calm, surrendered, centered, connected, and complete. And since it's Wednesday, we're going to talk about being centered. But this whole week, we are talking about money.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about money and being centered and how all that plays into overwhelm and
Steals
how to
peace.
not be in that place.
Yes. When I think of being overwhelmed with money and center, I think of maybe feeling stuck spending money on stuff that I don't really see as, valuable or beneficial, especially to like the cause of Christianity and to build up the church, but feeling like, I've got to pay the electric bill. I've got to have trash service. I've got to buy a house. I've got to buy a car. We've got to wear clothes. Like these things that don't necessarily directly like build up the church or whatever, but it's like this necessary stuff. And I think that's a false sense of feeling trapped. I don't think I need to feel trapped by that, but it is like, especially as we've been trying to be more and more intentional. It's like, are we being intentional enough? Is this?
Do we need to go get a yurt?
Yeah. Do we need to go? Right. Like how or like we'd said earlier in the week, there were many believers in God in the Bible who were wealthy, but for some reason, the Western church values poverty so much, especially Catholicism, right?
And it comes from our, Reformation roots, because around that time, holy poverty, like that poverty was this thing that was held up as a way to mortify the flesh.
Right. But I guess this feeling comes from a place of like, I want to like support every ministry I hear about, and I just can't. And then when I look at the things we do spend money on, it's like, how can we spend less on that? But I don't really see any way to do that. And so that's some of the tension of like, are we moving from center when we spend our money? That's the analysis that I'm thinking of. Like we've got to have a solid answer for those questions so that we can move from center. Is that the total opposite of what you're thinking of?
Well, I had a couple of different directions, neither of which was that one.
All right, we got three directions today.
Yeah, so one of the things I was thinking of is that one of the times when I am most overwhelmed about finances is when I am least grounded in who I am.
Yeah.
Like if I can remember that God is my father and that I am a trust fund child, that, yes, I have, X amount of money in our bank account, but God has trillions of dollars in his bank account and he can transfer that money in whenever he wants to. Like when I have that mentality, a lot of my money stress goes away.
Yeah. No, that's true. So that's more about your identity as a child of God, the owner of the universe.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no need for me to freak out. And once I started thinking about that more, it's just made such a big difference. Because for a long time, I don't know if it was just growing up or what, but I definitely had that mentality of I have to provide for myself. It's my job. And I was kind of raised that part of faithfulness means coming up with a way to make the money.
Sure.
Rather than saying, well, yes, I need to be faithful to do my part, but the other side of the coin is God's faithful to do his part. And when we're faithful, he can give us more money and we use it the way that he wants us to use it. So he can trust us with more.
Yeah, like we mentioned, I think, earlier in the week. He's not going to just give us money so that it can hang out in our bank account forever. Right. It's going to be so it can go to whatever, to accomplish the job, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one direction that I was thinking of. And then the other one is for me, I so last year, I think it was, maybe the year before, we read The Sacred Six by J.B. Glossender, which has changed so many of the ways that I view all kinds of things. But one of the things that he talks about, so you start out with a mission and then the values that are important to you, top six values, and then you evaluate everything from there. You know, what your goals are, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, all that kind of stuff. Um, and one of the things is he talks about how you need to have SMART goals, that they need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive, I think is what it is. But that realistic, that was something that was always missing from my goals. Is this something
that you could actually accomplish?
Yes. Like, I always am like, well, yeah. Because to me, like for me, the idea of how much energy do I have, when I ask myself that question, the answer depends on how much energy do I have before I am like so far in debt that I am having to collapse in bed. It's not like how much energy do I realistically have. And once I started thinking about that, it changed the way I viewed my goals and the way that I viewed our finances.
Yeah.
Because instead of going, oh my gosh, we have this debt, why are we not taking care of it? What is wrong with me? I'm such a bad person. It was, wait a minute, look at this realistically. How long would this realistically take for us to pay off? Okay. So that's what faithfulness means. It means being realistic. Not being perfect or being, I don't know, just that.
Well, that's almost a sense of like, I should have done something different and not even gotten into debt. Now I'm going to punish myself.
Right, yeah.
Whereas God always meets us where we're at. So whatever our moral state, when we become Christians, that's where we are, and God pours the grace on. And same with our financial state. If we're starting to get intentional about our money now, then let's be responsible now. We figure out what the situation is and what are the steps to make it better. But yeah, It's not productive to be like, oh boy, if only I could pay off this debt in 6 months instead of 3 years. Wouldn't that? I mean, if that's not realistic, then why even talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is that know thyself stuff that we talk about. Knowing where you actually are, and we talked about this on Monday too. Taking stock of your flocks and your fields. Figure out where you are, and then figure out the strategy that works best for you. And we're all different kinds of people, and the money strategy that works for me might not work for you.
Yeah, and I think some of that emotion, that tension is, I think that's what I was trying to describe. It's like, I think that tension comes from a spot where it's like, okay, I want to do something different with my money now for whatever reason. Maybe you've grown spiritually, or God's been working on your heart or something, and so there's more of a spirit of generosity there. But then the stuck is like, well, my financial situation's in shambles. I mean, I could give money to this thing, but then I wouldn't be able to pay my electric bill, or I'd be even more in debt because I default on my credit card or something.
Right.
God's way more logical than that, and I think prayerfully there's a path to get out from under all that, and then be the generous person. But there's a long hard road, I think, and that's always hard.
Yeah,
especially when we see the where we want to be, but it might take 5 or 10 years to get there.
Yeah, that is definitely hard to be patient. And I think when you're looking at what kinds of things do you want to give to, at least for me, this kind of goes back to the stuff we talked about with calling. Like, what are you passionate about? Which the flip side of that is, where is your pain at? Where is your trauma? Those are the things that you're going to be passionate about. And so God made you the way that you are. Nobody else is going to be passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. So use that passion to be like, okay, well, I'm going to give to, one of the things that we're really passionate about is Bibles and people getting into the Word. So that's one of the things that we like to give to. Or sexual addiction communities. We're really passionate about that. We like to give money to them.
Or stopping sex trafficking.
Yes.
There's organizations for that. Yeah. Right. And I think that's God in his wisdom saying, okay, well, this person will chip in towards that, and this other person towards that, and they don't have to be the same
Right.
passions and the same goals. I think one example of feeling stuck from us was when we first got married. We bought a car. We took
Oh,
out a
yeah.
loan, and so I think that's a tangible way where we're like, oh, I don't know if we were tithing or not, but it was still like that car payment was just like so heavy every month. It was just like, I wish we could do something, but we have to pay for the car every month. It was just, for years, it was such a burden, and we couldn't go back and not buy the car, and we were just,
Right.
but eventually we don't have to pay for the car anymore, and that's kind of, you just got to be where you're at,
Yeah.
and not, you can't wallow in that regret, and you can't fast forward to the point where you're financially better somehow.
Yeah.
God in his grace is going to sustain right where we are.
Right. Yeah. It's just kind of how do you be faithful exactly where you are rather than being in the past or the present, which we talked about that on Monday with the tapping and EFT stuff to help get rid of that emotional compound interest. And we'll probably end up talking about it more on Friday when we talk about being complete.
I'm sure. Like, we're not going to be able to say, well, what you really need to do is get out of this kind of debt or that kind of debt. Like, the steps we're not going to be able to say, but because I think everybody's financial situation is different, and God's plan for you is different, like we were just saying, and God's grace is poured out, whatever. Maybe you feel like you made mistakes or whatever, but the number one step is to pray for God to change your heart about the way you see your money,
Definitely.
and to get your own self centered on Him, and then your financial decisions will move out of your center as well. And
Yeah.
that's heart transformation, really.
Definitely. If you're moving out of the essence of who God designed you to be, that is such a good place to make financial decisions from, both as okay, I am fully grounded in my relationship with Jesus to the point where I do see myself as a trust fund person, and I can trust, I'm
Yeah.
not freaking out about it.
Yeah, that's a powerful prayer. That identity prayer, I mean, that you may even start there more than the like, what do I do now prayer. It's like, help me to see myself the way that I am, the way that you see
Yeah.
me, God. And that's where that comes from. That is powerful.
Right.
And to see the world around my situation the way you see it, God. I mean, that's the real world, and we want to live in the real world. And with
Definitely.
so many of these things, but especially with money, it's so confusing. It can feel like such a weight and such a trap, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if they're like, well, my job doesn't pay enough. If my job was better, like there's all these like, well, if this was better, then I'd be okay. And it's not, because you're in the situation that you're in.
Right. And I think part of being centered with money is recognizing that money is just a thing. Like that was so hard for me because again, one of the ways that I was raised was, oh, if we had more money, we would be able to do XYZ. Like it always seemed like if we had more money, we would be so happy and it would take care of all these problems, and money became this thing in my life that was like almost a person that was in in charge of things.
Or this idol. I mean, we're not worshiping directly, but it's the one that can answer all of our problems.
Right.
I mean, even it's so hard to not think like that.
Exactly.
We have to battle that with prayer.
Yeah, and recognizing that, emotional prosperity is now. Like spiritual prosperity is now. God has already changed those things in our lives. He already can give us that peace and that abundance and that freedom without having $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just have to ask for it. He's ready to say yes to that prayer.
Definitely. All right, we love you guys and we're praying for you. Hope that you have an awesome Wednesday and that you can maybe just stop. If you don't see yourself as a trust fund child, pray for that God will give you a right perspective on your finances.
Yeah, and we'll be praying for you guys too, because we found that prayer to be so powerful for us, and we pray it for our children. That identity prayer and that understanding of who I am and the world around me and my place in the world around me, that all comes from the Holy Spirit. That's all God's wisdom. and that's our center. We move out of that.
Yep. Thanks so much for sharing the podcast. We really appreciate everybody that's been sharing it. If you have found this helpful and you haven't shared it, please do share it.
Come on back tomorrow. We're still going to be talking about money for the rest of the week.
Yep. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
So long.